Hello everyone, welcome to my Bold and Beautiful Now channel.
Eric cries over Ridge's apology. A father and son finally confront the pain. The Bold and the Beautiful recap for Thursday, February 19th. On Thursday's powerful episode of The Bold and the Beautiful, pride, betrayal, regret, and love collided inside the Forrester mansion, and the result was one of the most emotional father-son moments the show has delivered in years. Eric Forrester, the patriarch who built a fashion empire from nothing, found himself gasping for breath as old wounds reopened. Ridge Forrester, the son who idolized him and fought him in equal measure, finally laid down his armor. And when Ridge apologized, truly apologized, Eric broke down. Not out of weakness, out of love. The battle lines are drawn. The tension was thick from the start. At the Forrester mansion, the truth was out. Eric was designing for Logan, not Forrester Creations, not his family company. Logan. And Ridge could barely contain his disbelief. "This is ridiculous," he snapped, pacing the room. "You're not going to work for this clown?" His eyes cut toward Bill Spencer, whose smug presence only fueled the fire. Bill didn't flinch. Why would he? He had just secured the ultimate coup, the legendary Eric Forrester designing exclusively for Logan's fashion line under Spencer Publications' backing. Brooke Logan Forrester stood caught in the middle, her loyalty torn between husband and father-in-law. Her first instinct was suspicion. Donna knew about this, didn't she? And in that moment, it became clear. Donna Logan Forrester had helped Eric orchestrate the move behind everyone's backs. Katie Logan Spencer, meanwhile, wasn't apologizing for a thing. She stood firm, even proud. "All of Eric's new designs are for Logan," she reminded them, a hint of satisfaction in her voice. To Ridge, it felt like betrayal layered on top of betrayal. Ridge feels the sting. From Ridge's perspective, this wasn't just business, it was personal. Eric was supposed to be retired, supposed to be resting, supposed to be focusing on his health after months of medical scares and declining stamina. Instead, he was launching a rival line with Bill Spencer, Ridge's longtime adversary. "You wouldn't work for a startup," he insisted. "Not like this." Bill arched a brow. "Why do you care? You kicked him to the curb." The jab landed, because somewhere deep down, Ridge knew that was exactly how Eric felt. Eric's fury boiled over. Eric had listened quietly, for a while. Then the dam broke. He stood tall despite his age, his voice shaking not from frailty, but emotion. "You threw a retirement party I didn't want," he shot at Ridge. The room froze. The retirement party, the celebration that was meant to honor Eric, had always felt wrong to him. It wasn't a tribute. It was a dismissal. Ridge had framed it as respect. Eric experienced it as erasure. Katie attempted to mediate. Eric came to me. He made the offer. But Ridge wasn't buying that absolution. "With his health," Ridge argued, "you should have refused." That was the wrong thing to say. Because in that moment, Ridge wasn't protecting his father, he was diminishing him, and Eric would not stand for it. "I am not invisible," Eric's voice rose. "I can make my own decisions," he declared. He admitted what no one else dared to say. Yes, he was old, but he was not finished, not irrelevant, not invisible. That word lingered in the air like smoke. Invisible. For a man who built a global fashion dynasty, who mentored generations, who shaped Los Angeles couture culture, invisibility is a cruel fate. Ridge tried to explain. He understood Eric felt disrespected. He had apologized before. But Eric wasn't hearing reconciliation. He was hearing justification. The stress mounted. His breathing quickened. His hand moved to his chest. And suddenly, this wasn't about fashion. It was about survival. A medical emergency unfolds. Eric struggled for air. Donna rushed forward. Brooke gasped. Ridge's anger vanished instantly, replaced with fear. Bill, pragmatic and decisive, grabbed his phone. 911. Within minutes, paramedics arrived with equipment in hand, blood pressure cuffs, oxygen monitors, a syringe prepared to bring down dangerously elevated numbers. The only powerful Forrester mansion transformed into an emergency scene. Eric, pale and stubborn, refused to go to the hospital. "I'm not going," he insisted. A paramedic prepared a shot to stabilize his blood pressure. Eric objected again. Bill stepped in firmly. "They're trying to help you." Finally, Eric relented just enough to admit that he understood that. But understanding it didn't mean surrender. Control, the last thing he has. Eric's resistance wasn't about arrogance. It was about control. When your body begins to betray you, control becomes sacred. "I want to be in charge of my own life," he pleaded. And that plea cut deeper than any business argument. Because this was never about Logan, never about Bill, never even about Ridge winning or losing. It was about a man terrified that the world he built no longer needed him. A son steps forward. Ridge moved closer. Gone was the combative CEO. Gone was the wounded son lashing out. What stood in his place was a boy who once looked up at his father as a hero. Ridge took Eric's hand. "Breathe with me," he urged softly. It was something Eric used to do for him when he was a child, when nightmares came or fear took over. Now the roles were reversed. Ridge guided him through slow breaths. Inhale, exhale. The room fell silent, except for the steady instruction of a son trying to steady his father's life. The apology that finally lands. Then he did something he hadn't fully done before. He didn't defend, he didn't justify, he didn't explain. He apologized. "You were always my rock," he said, his voice breaking, "and you still are." He assured Eric he had listened to every story growing up, remembered every detail, carried every lesson. If he had made Eric feel invisible, he was sorry. Not sorry for miscommunication, not sorry if feelings were hurt, just sorry. And that's when it happened. A tear slipped down Eric's cheek. He quickly wiped it away, old habits die hard, but the vulnerability was visible. Decades of pride melted in that single moment. What the tears really meant? Eric wasn't crying because he was weak. He was crying because his son finally saw him, truly saw him, not as a fragile patient, not as a liability, not as a relic of fashion's past, but the man who built everything, the man who mattered. Recognition can heal wounds no medicine can touch. The room reacted. Donna's eyes filled with tears. Brooke's expression softened. Tatey looked shaken. Even Bill Spencer, rarely sentimental, understood the gravity of what was happening. This wasn't corporate rivalry anymore. This was family. And family is messy, but it's also sacred. Ridge kissed his father's hand, a quiet gesture, a reversal of childhood, and the camera lingered on that image as somber looks passed around the room. Meanwhile, at Spencer Publications, across town, the fallout was already spreading. At Spencer Publications, Hope Logan Spencer learned from Liam Spencer that Eric's move was fueled by hurt, by a desire to teach Ridge a lesson. Hope immediately saw the larger implications. This could destroy what's left of everything. Brooke and Katie's fragile sisterhood, Ridge's and Eric's bond, the balance between Forrester and Logan. Liam pointed out something crucial. Ridge talks about Forrester's sticking together, but did he do that for Eric? Hope wasn't so sure. She couldn't ignore Eric's health struggles. Was launching a rival line really in his best interest, or was it a final act of defiance? A family at a crossroads. Thursday's episode wasn't about fashion. It was about legacy. Eric represents the original vision of Forrester Creations. Ridge represents evolution. But evolution without respect feels like replacement, and replacement feels like abandonment. This storyline taps into something deeply American. the fear of aging out of relevance, of being honored ceremonially while being pushed aside practically. Eric's tears symbolized every parent who wonders if their child still values them. Ridge's apology symbolized every adult child realizing too late how much pressure they've placed on their aging parent. What happens next? The immediate crisis may have passed. Eric stabilized, the paramedics left, but the emotional reckoning is just beginning. Will Eric reconsider working with Logan? Will Ridge step back and truly share power? Will Bill use this vulnerability to strengthen his position? Will Brooke and Katie survive the crossfire? One thing is certain. Eric's health remains fragile, and now everyone has to decide what matters more, pride or family. A moment that will echo. Soap operas thrive on romance and rivalry, but sometimes the most powerful scenes are quiet. A father struggling to breathe, a son